All right, looks like we are live, and I want to welcome everybody to Standing for Truth. I am your host, Donnie, and on Standing for Truth, we focus on the truth of biblical creation. We also host interviews, debates, discussions, lectures, and more. And so if you enjoy the content coming out of this ministry, please hit that subscribe button and make sure to share around our material, as the truth is important. Now, tonight, we have the epic, much anticipated debate between Dr. Ken Hovind and Luca Medugno. So, gentlemen, thank you both for giving us your time for this important debate.
Okay.
Thank you for having us.
My pleasure.
Yes.
My pleasure. So, as we usually do, gentlemen, Dr. Hovind, you're no stranger to this channel. I think this is maybe your 30th time here, so you really need no introduction, but we are always getting new subscribers, new supporters. So why don't we still go through some introductions? Who are you? What's going on over at your channel, Luca? And Dr. Hovind, what's going on over at Dal? We can start with you, Ken.
Okay, yes, Ken Hovind, love the Lord. Been a Christian 53 years this February, and I defend the position that the Bible is true as written. God made everything in 6 days. Everything. Dinosaurs, everything. We're in Lenox, Alabama, straight north of Pensacola, 70 miles. We have 140 acres and a bunch of lakes and fishing and all kinds of activities, teaching science in the Bible, an amazing science center. Basically, it's a place where God gets the glory for his creation. So I just want to tell the folks I love the Lord. I'm trying to serve him and want to draw you into his family. If you're not saved, I hope you get saved. Give your heart to the Lord. Give me a call, 855-BIG-DINO, extension 3. I'll be glad to lead you to the Lord over the phone. Thank you.
Awesome. I appreciate that, Kent. Luca, thanks for being here. Thanks for giving us your time. And what's going on? A little bit about yourself.
Yes. As you know, I'm a skeptic and an atheist. I live in Italy. I have a degree in chemistry, and also I've studied agriculture in my high school years, and that fact will be useful in this debate. And as for now, I'm working as a teacher, but it's only for a few months. So that's me. We can. Of course, I want to say also that it's an honor to be here and to do this debate.
Well, I appreciate it.
Luca, Piacere di considerarti. How do you say good to meet you in Italian?
È bello conoscerti.
Oh, okay. I'll just have to stick with English. It's all I can handle. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's not so simple. No. Italian is a very hard nut to crack.
Well, I appreciate it, gentlemen. Great introductions from the both of you. We've already got a great chat, so please, everybody in the chat, tag me at Standing for Truth with your questions, because we will be having a Q&A period. Now, real quick, couple reminders. This is kind of a 2-day event. Today, the topic is there reasonable evidence for evolution? Tomorrow, we've got an epic soteriology debate, lordship versus free grace, what is true biblical salvation. At the end of the month, we've got a couple epic debates as well. On the 30th, the main event, pre-tribulation rapture versus post-tribulation rapture. Dr. Hovind will again be with us. CJ Cox versus Ken Hovind. So that's going to be a ton of fun. Now, that being said, the format for the night, I just want to go over real quick. 12-minute opening statements. We're going to be starting off with Luca's opening statement, as he is the affirmative tonight. Then we're going to have 6-minute uninterrupted rebuttals. Then we're going to have an organic, free-flowing discussion where the debaters get to ask each other questions. As always, we keep it as equally timed as possible. Then we're going to have 5-minute closing statements and an audience Q&A. So please, to everybody in the chat, tag me at Standing for Truth. That being said, we're going to hand it to Luca. Luca, the floor is yours for a 12-minute opening statement. I can also share your screen.
Okay, it was... Okay. You can see my screen now?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Good to know.
Luca, and what I'll do is I'll give you a 1-minute warning at the 11-minute mark, and that way you'll know to start winding things down. So whenever you're ready.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I'm ready. Okay. There is reasonable evidence for evolution. It's a good question. Okay, I want to start with a very simple example, cattle. Okay, modern cattle evolved from a very ancient form of cow. It was called auroch, and it was the ancestor of two major taxa, the zebu and the European cattle. That's the cow that we all know. It was the first domesticated bovine, and we have both historical and genetic evidence for it. Okay. So that's the auroch. It's extinct now, but the last specimen of this species died in the 17th century in Poland. And even if they are extinct, we know a lot of this beast. So we have both documents, fossil, and bones, of course, because it died in a recent time. Okay, those beasts were fairly aggressive, and we know that were used in bullfighting, and it was called bull leaping at the time in Crete. And we can infer their production of milk and meat from two modern kind of cattle, and those cattle are a result of an experiment to reproduce this animal, the auroch, from the modern cattle. They breed this animal to get to the starting point, basically. So we know that they had a very good production of meat. They have a lot of muscle and a very low production of milk. It's important for later. So we get to the Friesian cattle. It's a very modern cow. That's me in the photo, of course. And they came from the North Holland and the Friesland. They were introduced in my country after the Second World War, and they have the highest milk production in without all breeds worldwide. So those animals are very, very mild animals. They have a very good temperament, I know for a fact, and they have a massive production of milk. And also they have a very low muscle mass. They always seem to be starving, even though they are quite healthy. They produce so much milk that they need integrators to replenish the calcium in the bones, or else they will grow sick. Okay. Okay. Here you can see some difference from these two animals, the behavior to an aggressive behavior from the auroch, and the very mild and good temperament of the Friesian cattle. The muscle mass, we go from a good quantity of muscle to a very reduced quantity of muscle. a very important thing, the Frisian cattle has no horns, and the other one has a very characteristic pair of horns. And the milk production, that's very different from the auroch to the modern Frisian cattle. Okay, and that's my question. They are the same kind. If not, what count as macroevolution? And get to something more interesting. Wheat and corn. Okay, those two plants are the most common cereals cultivated by humans, and we can trace their evolution through history and through archaeological evidence. Wheat starts as a very humble plant. Those two plants that you can see in those photos are their ancestor. It's still with us, and it's called wild acorn, and it's a very modest plant, but you can still eat it, of course. And there is a very important characteristic with this plant. They are a diploid species, so they have 14 chromosomes. It's important to know that the chromosome of these plants go in 7 to 7 to 7. Every part of chromosome, they are composed by 7 chromosomes, 7, 14, and so on and so forth. And now, this is the common wheat, and it's a modern species of wheat. The very important and curious thing about it is that it's an alloexlapoid, so it has 42 chromosomes, so much more than the first two that you see. And the curious thing is that they are inherited from acorn wheat and from another two species, the Angiopsis fletoides and the wild goat grass. There are two different kind of not wheat, of grass. There are different kind of plants. So we can compare these two plants, and here you can see the production of these plants, and you can see how the wheat is a better plant in every aspect. Basically, it can produce much more caryopsid, much more to it, and also has much more chromosomes. So it's a very interesting thing to, if you want to infer evolution in a plant. Corn, it's another good example, and it starts as a grass called Teosinte, and we know that it evolved from that, but with archaeological and okay. We know from history that these plants derive from this plant, but also from genetics. We know that. And you can see the difference from the Teosinte, here, that's the Teosinte, and the corn. It's a very different plant, but we know that they are related. And now we can see what the corn is today. It's a very beautiful and big plant, and it has one of the highest production in the world for a cereal grain. And of course, it's used in several ways. Staple food, alcohol production. We can also eat it, of course. And it's a very resilient plant. But it cannot longer reproduce without us. Okay. Here you can see the production of these plants. Of course, teosinte is just a grass. It's grass, so it has no production. Corn, of course, has a very high production.
1
Yes. And of course, teosinte needs no help with reproduction. Corn does. So last evidence, horizontal gene transfer. It's any transfer of gene done in any other way than the sexual way, and it's a very important factor in evolution. There are a lot of examples. We can like gene resistance bacteria, or the evolution of the sweet potato plant. And okay, and there are we can use the horizontal gene transfer to create genetically modified organisms. So it's a very important mechanism. And that's my question. Okay, we can stop there.
All right, I appreciate that, Luca. I appreciate that opening statement. That is 12 minutes, and you ended just on time. So I appreciate that. We've got a lot of questions flying in, guys. Thank you so much for the super chat, super stickers, and thank you for tagging me with your questions. So that being said, we're going to hand it over to Dr. Hovind. Dr. Hovind, the floor is yours. Whenever you're ready, brother, you've got 12 minutes.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Good to be on your program again. The question being debated or discussed tonight is there evidence for evolution? I think, first of all, you have to determine what do you mean by that word evolution, because it's a pretty slippery word. I frequently have used the 6 different definitions of the word evolution. Makes the atheists angry because I expose it in such simple terms that people can say, wow, I understand. So I'm going to explain what evolution is. And then all the examples he gave, the cow, the corn, the wheat, it's still the same kind of plant or cow. It's a cow. It didn't change anything else. So let's define what we're talking about. This textbook, 2nd grade textbook, says life too has evolved on Earth. They're teaching the kids from kindergarten on that evolution has happened. They're brainwashing them. What does this word mean, evolved? Well, I say it has 6 different meanings. First, there would have to be cosmic evolution. Where did the matter for this universe come from? We're here. So we have 3 things to explain: time, space, and matter. Where did time come from? Where did space come from? Where did matter come from? The standard answer has been the Big Bang. Why cosmic evolution matters. What is cosmic evolution? This is the origin of time, space, matter in the evolution theory. I say there is 0 scientific evidence for that. None. It is purely taken on faith. It is a religion. It is a mental illness to believe that matter can come from nothing. And that's what they believe. Secondly, we'd have to have chemical evolution. And our opponent here tonight is a chemistry teacher. I'm glad to hear about that. In the beginning, or at least following the beginning, more Big Bang, 14 billion years ago, there was hydrogen, helium, and a little bit of lithium, according to msutoday.msu.edu. In the beginning, there were 3 elements. Okay, let's see. Low mass elements, hydrogen, helium, were produced in the hot explosion for the Big Bang. An extremely hot and dense region of radiant energy called the Big Bang. This is what is taught universally, as far as I know. I found dozens of sites talking about this. The Big Bang produced hydrogen and helium. 73% of the mass of the visible universe is in the form of hydrogen. Helium makes up 25%. So the other 90 elements, there's only 2%. Interesting, okay? Low mass elements, hydrogen and helium, were produced in the hot, dense conditions of the birth of the universe. And the birth of stars, I talk about 15, we can read all about the Big Bang, but I think it's pretty accepted universally, that the Big Bang only produced hydrogen, helium, and possibly some lithium, the first three elements on our periodic table. Big Bang nucleosynthesis. The universe's light element abundance is another important criteria of the Big Bang hypothesis. Verified it. Oh, really? Let's see. A third theory of life's origin is known as chemical evolution. Prebiotic changes slowly transform simple atoms and molecules into more complex chemicals. How did we get all these complex chemicals? You're a chemistry teacher, maybe you can explain it. Chemical evolution is a step that has to be done. They ignore it, but it's a vital step in, if you're going to define, is there evidence for evolution? Oh, where's the evidence for chemical evolution? We have 92 elements plus the synthetic ones on our periodic table. It is not possible to fuse past iron. So if they want to say the hydrogen and helium were fused in the core of the stars to make the heavier elements, well, even if that's true, iron cannot be fused into anything heavier because of the insane amounts of energy and force required to fuse iron atoms. So my question would be for my opponent, how did we get these 92 elements since you cannot fuse past iron? The Big Bang produced hydrogen and helium and maybe lithium. Okay, I think that's stupid, but if they believe that, that's fine. How do you get uranium and all the higher elements? Where do these things come from? Lead, bismuth. How do you get all this? From hydrogen gas, okay? Fourthly, you have to have what's called stellar evolution. Stars and planets would have to form. Nobody's ever seen a star form. Nobody's ever seen a planet form. It's pure religious belief. Stellar evolution, a process by which a star changes over the course of time. Well, stars are burning out. I don't think anybody questions that. We're likely to see a star explode when it runs out of fuel. But where's the evidence for stars forming? There are lots of stars out there. Everybody on Earth can own 11 trillion of them to yourself. There's plenty of stars. All that came from a dot smaller than a period? I'm going to have a hard time believing that. Why is stellar evolution important? Okay, the stars are going to have to form from this hydrogen and helium gas. The silent embarrassment of astrophysics is we don't know how a single one of these stars managed to form. This is 35 years ago. They still don't know how a star can form. They make up theories. Why do stars evolve? They don't. They degrade. The life cycle of a star, it slowly burns out. And the rest is imagination, that this cloud of dust can somehow get together and form a new star. Show me any place where dust has enough gravity to attract itself into a solid. I'd like to see that, please, and have it explained carefully. I taught physics. I'd like to hear that very carefully. Stellar evolution doesn't happen. It's a religious belief. The origin of stars is one of the most fundamental unsolved problems of contemporary astrophysics. This is 30 years ago. They still don't know. But you have to have stars to evolve. So what do you mean by evidence for evolution? I say there is zero evidence for cosmic, chemical, or stellar evolution. No one understands how star formation proceeds. It's really remarkable. Nobody understands. Let's see. We see stars blow up. That's called a nova. If it's a big one, they call it a supernova, but it's the same thing. How many stars are there in the universe? Oh boy, a whole bunch. Let's see. Current estimate, 70 billion trillion stars. That's a lot. Million, billion, trillion, quadrillion, quintillion, sextillion, septillion, octillion. Big number, okay? 3 times as much as earlier estimates. They found out there's even more stars than they thought. And all that fit in a dot smaller than a period on a page? So you'd have to be insane to believe said something so stupid. The Bible says God made the stars. I believe that. But see, I admit mine's a religion. They don't admit theirs is a religion. They believe the Big Bang made the stars. Oh, you're welcome to believe that, but it's not science. It's not even common sense. Look toward the heaven, tell the stars, if thou be able to number them. Nobody's been able to count the stars. Years ago, the estimate was 70 sextillion stars, maybe 3 times more. We don't know. There's a lot out there. Everybody on Earth could own 11 trillion of them, unless it's 3 times more. That's a lot. We should see 9.7 million new stars forming every minute for 13.7 billion years. Nobody's ever seen one form. One. Then you have to have what's called organic evolution, the origin of life. Nobody's ever seen life get created from non-living material. And if a bunch of scientists somehow produce life in the laboratory, All that would prove is it takes intelligence to make life, which is what we've been saying all along. We're already standing at the top of the mountain of truth, waiting for you guys to catch up. It took intelligence to make life. If we look for the simplest creatures on the planet, we will find a wee bacterium that lives happily in the digestive tract of cows and goats. Mycoplasma mycoids. It builds itself from a very modest blueprint, only 525 genes. It's the simplest life form we've ever seen. Well, one gene is incredibly complex. The simplest cell is more complex than the space shuttle, which is the most complex machine built by man so far that I know of. There's no such thing as a simple cell. 525 genes in the simple one. New theory of organic evolution. How did life get started? They don't even have a good theory. Nobody knows how a mixture of lifeless chemicals spontaneously evolved themselves into a living cell. Nobody knows. Primordial soup. They made up the term in 1924 about how life came from soup. Primordial soup. Okay, we could talk a long time on that, but my point would be part of the theory of evolution has to have the origin of life. How did life get started? And I'm telling you, they don't even have a good theory. Let me get to the last two, because all you shared tonight was evidence for microevolution, variation within the kind. Earth began as a hot ball of rock with no atmosphere. Okay, let's see. As the molten ball cooled 4 billion years ago, it formed a hard, rocky crust on the outside. 4.1 billion years ago, the surface of the Earth began to cool, and it made a solid crust. Okay, let's see. In these chemicals, the primordial soup somehow sparked to life. Yeah, somehow do it. Okay, so your examples you gave of what we call, let me skip up to that, microevolution are just that. It's a variation within the same kind. God said all through Scripture that the animals would bring forth after their kind. Macroevolution is where it changes from one kind of another to another. Your example of corn becoming more grain rather than the stalk and things. There's no question. Man has played with the different crops, the corn, the cows, etc. Not a crop, but the herds. And they have developed things that they want. They want a cow that gives more milk. Okay? Well, now it doesn't have as much beef. And now you got to babysit the cow because it'll die in the wild. They've taken the wild cow and have developed some that give more beef, some that give more milk, some that give more calves. No question. But everything they've done is selecting a pre-existing gene. The cows already gave milk. They just got the ones that give more milk. That's all they did. What they've done is called artificial selection. They didn't create anything. Why don't they breed wings on the cow so it can fly? Let me see them do that. See, nothing new is created. They took the wheat and got the grains that give more grains per head or bigger grains per head. And they selected those to produce the next generation. And sure enough, over time, you can get wheat that gives more grains or more pounds per acre. But all you've done is select something that already existed. The wheat didn't start growing on a tree. It's still growing on a stalk. And it's still wheat. It's still recognizable as wheat to a 3-year-old. So I'm saying microevolution is all we've ever seen. And that's a lousy word. Macroevolution doesn't happen. It's never been observed. 4 processes of evolution. We see varieties of dogs. It's still a dog. That does not prove the dog and the banana are related. And your evidences for cows and for corn and for wheat do not prove corn and wheat and cows are related. So my question would be, the Bible says they bring forth after their kind 10 times in the first chapter. What you gave was examples of microevolution. So if the debate tonight is, where is the evidence for evolution? I would like you to show us, where is the evidence for anything other than microevolution? Where's the evidence for the first 5? I contend there is none. It's a religion. You have to believe it by faith. It is not part of science at all. Shouldn't be taught in the schools, that's for sure. Thank you.
All right, perfect. I appreciate it. Just on time as well. Dr. Hovind, thank you. Luca and Kent for your opening statements. I appreciate the visuals. And we are now moving into the rebuttal portion of the debate. For the rebuttals, we've got 6 minutes, Luca. So what I'll do is something similar to the opening statements. Once we hit the 5-minute mark, I'll give you a 1-minute warning, and then you'll know to start winding things down. So, Luca, you are on mute. Just make sure you unmute yourself. And when you're good to go, I will start the timer.
Okay. So I'm here to give evidence for evolution, and I'm only here to give evidence for macroevolution. So yes, those two are still cows, of course, but you have some new characteristics. So less muscle mass, no arms, a bigger mammary gland, and it's a very complex structure. You need a lot of blood and a lot of structure to make that work. So let's imagine a human with those differences. So a human with more muscle mass. We do not have arms, but maybe longer and thicker hair, and our glands are more or less the same, but we can stretch it to imagine a smaller brain. That's still a human? I don't think so. So let's talk about the plants. I've shown the wheat. Wheat, it's a very good example. It has a very much bigger genome than the acorn. So where did that come from? It's a lot of information, if we want to call it that. There are chromosomes, a lot of 3 times more. So how can you explain it? But still microevolution. Okay, corn, it's a bigger, better plant. It can not longer reproduce, of course, but we can see things like that in nature too. With the apple, for example, they need animals to eat and spread the seed. So it's still a natural thing to me. And then you get to the next example, the horizontal gene transfer. And with that, you can see a hybrid from a bacteria and a plant, 2 very different kind of being. Or a human and a pig. I've seen those things with my 2 eyes. A pig modified to grow a human heart inside it to transplant. So that's still microevolution? I don't think so. And I did a lot of research on that. I did some experiment too. I worked on nematodes, and I did some experiment. I did some experiments with plants too. In my high school years, of course, I was one of the best of my school, so I did get some opportunities that there were not common things, but I still did it. So that's my rebuttal. If you want to ask me things about the first 4 points on your evolution, okay, but I think that will be a waste of time. I'm here to prove micro to macro evolution, and that's my point. Anything beyond that, I think it's a waste of time, but that's my rebuttal.
All right, I appreciate.
Yeah.
No problem. I appreciate it. That's a minute and 40 seconds to spare. And as we always do, we will toss that into the discussion portion. So that being said, we're going to hand it over to Kent. Kent, you have 6 minutes for an uninterrupted rebuttal whenever you're ready.
Well, thank you, sir. There are 250 recognized breeds of cattle now throughout the world. Some give more milk, some have more beef, some can stand the cold better, some can stand the heat better. They breed them for hot climates, cold climates, things like that. All they've ever done is select a variety of cow that is best for their environment or what they're trying to get, more beef, more milk, etc. That you mentioned about they no longer have horns. Well, that's an example of losing information, not gaining information. See, going from having horns to not having corn is losing. And then you said, well, we don't have horns, but some people have thicker hair. Are you implying that hair can turn into horn? Stop and think. There are 200, I would say, the more they get away from the wild, normal cow that these all came from, the one that can survive our cows couldn't survive in the wilderness. We got to fence them in and protect them. They're dumb. The wild cows can survive on their own. So the more you get away from the original cow to a specialized breed, you may get something you want, like more milk or more beef. That's good, but you're going to have problems. They have more problems with diseases. They're less likely to survive. They normally don't live as long. So yes, you can get a specialized breed, but all that's ever happened in the history of humanity is selecting a slice of an already existing gene code. They have not added anything. Same thing with the corn production. There are 6 types of corn kernels: the flint, the flour, the dent, the pop, the sweet, and the waxy. Who cares? There are hundreds of varieties of corn. Farmers have been working for generations, for thousands of years, with corn to get corn that produces more kernels per ear, or more ears per stalk, or more stalks per acre. There's no question they have increased the corn production per acre, but along with that, there came some real serious problems. It is now no longer disease resistant. They have to babysit the field and spray it with chemicals all the time to keep the bacteria and stuff off of it. It's not an improvement, and they didn't change it to anything but corn. No farmer in the history of the planet will ever show you any evidence for any corn producing anything other than corn. Going forward, we all agree corn will always produce corn. But going backwards, you evolutionists can imagine that corn came from a bacteria, which came from a dot of nothing exploding. I'm sorry, that's pure imagination. It's not science. It should not be taught in science class. It should be taught in a religion class, and it shouldn't be taught in a public school at all. Evolution shouldn't be taught in public schools. It's not part of science. Teach the kids science. There are 200 varieties of wheat. About 100 different varieties of wheat are cultivated right now. Others have been produced, and they said, it's not worth messing with. It doesn't give us any advantage, so why waste a field on it? These wheat kernels might have all come from a common ancestor called wheat. That's it. So seeing 200 varieties of wheat does not prove wheat and cows are related. So my question to you is very simple. Do you believe wheat and cows are related to a common ancestor? I yield my time.
All right, I appreciate it. Kent and Luca, thank you so much for the opening statements and the rebuttal. So we are now moving into the open discussion portion of the debate. I can see from the audience that we still have questions flying in. Make sure you're tagging me at Standing for Truth. We're going to have a solid audience Q&A. So that being said, Luca, we're going to hand it over to you since Dr. Hovind just ended with his rebuttal. We'll let you start us off. Maybe you had a question you wanted to ask or a few points you wanted to address. So, Luca, go ahead.
Yes, I'd love to discuss my points because, of course, cows are cows, but the auroch is not a cow. It's a cow like a dog is a wolf. There are different species. Some say that was a subspecies, but that's debatable. It's not so clear. Okay, that's a subspecies. You can say that's still microevolution. Okay, but the changes are still there. And my point was, if you try to think those level of changes on a human, what will you get?
I would say no matter what you do, humans will only and always produce baby humans. No exceptions.
Okay.
So that's a variation of the same kind. See, and you mentioned about the wolf and the cow. I believe the wolf and the dog. I believe the wolf and the dog had a common ancestor, and it looked like a dog. It had hair. It had 4 feet. It had a nose. It had a tail at the other end. And it looked like a dog. And a 4-year-old can tell you a dog and a wolf are the same kind of animal. They are not the same as a wolf and a banana are not the same kind. A 3-year-old can tell you that. So what you have observed and mentioned is nothing but variations of the same kind. And God said 10 times in the first chapter of the Bible, they'll bring forth after their kind. Darwin wrote a book and called it The Origin of Species, and this is where the problem came in. A dog and a wolf are considered a different species, but they're the same kind of animal. They're certainly in the same family. Our classification system with kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species, they might have been variations of species, but it's the same family. It's a dog kind. The dog, the wolf, the coyote might have had a common ancestor. But that doesn't prove dogs and bananas have a common ancestor. And that's what bothers most thinking people. You guys use these examples of corn and wheat and say, see, this proves everything is related. No, it does not. Your wheat example proves that wheat can be selected for a certain type, more grain or something, or survive in hotter climate or grow faster, but it's still wheat. That's all they've ever gotten in the history of the world. No farmer will ever tell you, no dog breeder will tell you, you can crossbreed dogs and get anything other than a dog. You might get some little bitty useless ones, but there will still be a dog, barely. Go ahead.
Okay. My question still stands. If you want to imagine a human with the same difference that the aurochs has with a normal cow, what will you get? It's just an experiment. Just think about it. Same level of difference.
Right. I understand. This is exactly what Adolf Hitler tried to do. Let's select a certain type of human that we want and eliminate the rest. He thought that the blonde-haired, blue-eyed Norwegian, he thought they were the superior race. Now, he may have been right on that, but they're still producing humans. That's it. So this idea, farmers select a certain breed for their field or for their time frame or for their soil, but they're not creating anything. All the examples, if somebody did that with humans, I would be willing to predict after 50,000 generations, you would only get humans. You might select those with darker skin or lighter skin or blonder hair or red hair or black hair or bigger muscle mass, but that's all you're going to get. Is there a limit? Is something like Arnold Schwarzenegger, is that the limit? Do you think cows, there are cows that weigh over 2,000 pounds, and it's a whole lot of it is muscle. Do you think they will ever be able to produce a human that weighs 2,000 pounds of all muscle? No. It's going to walk on 2 legs, not 4. It's never going to turn to a cow. There are variations you can selectively breed for taller humans. And over a period of time, you might get a whole island full of people that are 7 feet tall. Okay? Do you think they'll ever get a human that is 17 feet tall like a giraffe? You could selectively breed for smaller humans. You think you'll ever get one as small as a hamster? No. There are limits. Go ahead.
Okay. Let's talk about the second example. Wheat now has a much bigger genome, with acorn was much smaller. Now wheat has a much bigger genome. So how can you explain for that? Because if that is true, so animals and plants can gain information. Let's call it information. I call it DNA, more chromosome, whatever you want. So how can you explain it in your model? Because it's a fact. Wheat now has a much bigger genome than their ancestors. So it's a problem for you? It's not? Tell me.
Okay, are you saying the wheat, they have added information to the genome of the wheat? I do not believe that for 1 second. I think they've selected.
Shown you that is an hexaploid. So he has 42 chromosomes. Acorn has 14, 3 times more.
Well, they have doubled or tripled the existing information. If I gave you a copy of a book and said, this book has 200 pages, what if I gave you 7 copies of the same book? That's all they've done is diploid number, duplicate exactly the number of chromosomes, make it double or triple. I agree, that's been done. But adding chromosomes and adding more of this same chromosome is not adding new information. It's adding another copy of the same information. I think if you study that out, you'll find those plants that they've developed that have, more chromosomes. It's simply the same chromosome doubled. It's not new information. It's the same information twice. So I completely disagree. Why don't they get the wheat to grow as big as a basketball? There are fruits as big as a basketball, like a watermelon. Why don't they get wheat to do that? There are limits. I'm just telling you, all we've ever seen is examples of variation of the same kind, and the wheat example you gave is still wheat.
Okay.
It may have more chromosomes, but it does not have new information. I would challenge you to prove that.
I can right now. Those chromosomes are not the same because they came from 3 different plants. It was written on my slides. So they are not a copy. They are different. So that's still new information. First, there was acorn with 14 chromosomes. Another plant made an hybrid with the acorn, and you get a tetraploid. And so, and at the end, another plant made another hybrid, and now we have 6. So the wheat plant has new information and triple the time. So yeah, it's not
Luca,
a copy. It's new information.
Okay, is the wheat plant that has new information, you say, is it still wheat?
Yes, of course.
And do you think that process is going to turn a bacteria to a whale?
No, because bacteria do not become whales, of course. Bacteria are completely different to us. They are another domain. But I have an example even for that.
Okay.
But it's further away. But now we can say that plants, and not only plants, of course, can increase their genetic, let's say, information. I'm not too good with this language, but it's still new things, new chromosomes, and there are not copy. There are new things. There are 3 plants in one. So how far you can go with that? You can go pretty far, because hexaploid, it's not the end. There are plants that have more. And wheat now is a bigger, stronger, better plant in any way. So there is no real bad side to it.
Well, I would say all you've given, again, are examples of microevolution. It is still recognizable as the same kind. Let's see, here we go. I will show you thousands of drawings from the textbook and the internet. They do teach that all forms of life today, every form, has a common ancestor. I'll get one here. Do you believe you are related to a whale if you go back far enough in time? Do you and a whale have a common ancestor? Because you saw the wheat examples that changed, therefore, is that enough evidence to get you to believe that wheat and whales are, that you and whales are related? That is what the book, here, just cut this off the internet right now. They do teach that all forms of life go back to a common ancestor. So I said, do you believe wheat and cows have a common ancestor? I'd like to hear an answer to that. Here's a typical tree of life from a textbook. They showed the humans at the top, the birds, the bears, the worms, the plants, wheat is on there, all going back to a common ancestor. Do you believe this is how we got here on this planet? Is this tree of life accurate? If not, Would you help me get it out of the textbook so the kids aren't taught something so stupid?
So, yeah, I'm going step by step. We started with subspecies, so microevolution. Corns and wheat are different species, so we are a little bit further away. And corn is interesting too. I put it in my presentation for a reason. The difference between corn and teosinte are very small, so much so that archaeologists need to look at the fruit, the maize, to understand if something is a domesticated form of teosinte or not, because the dividing point is the ability to the plant to reproduce by itself. For anything else, they are much or less the same. And with so much little difference, you get to a grass plant to corn. Corn, it's a very big plant. I did my 5 years of high school in my school. I don't know if you've seen my school in the end of my presentation. I was in the middle of fields, animals, and so on and so forth. I've seen corn. It's a very big plant. It's a very strong plant. It's not grass. So how can you say that it's microevolution starting to a grass plant that can produce very little, if anything at all, to a behemoth like corn?
Well, no, I grew up in Illinois, corn country. We were surrounded by cornfields. There are hundreds of varieties of corn that farmers have been able to produce. Some grows better in sandy soil or limey soil or whatever. Some grows better in hot climate or shady land, or, they produce a lot of variety. It's always corn. But the textbooks, like this one I'm showing you here, says all the animals, all the plants are related. The corn, the sunflowers, everything, the octopus, the starfish, the worm, and the humans all came from a common ancestor. What you've given examples of corn or wheat is only proving what God said would happen 10 times in the first chapter and 10 more times in the flood story. So 20 times in the Bible, God said the plants and animals will always bring forth after their kind. You have not given any examples of anything that's a different kind. Okay. Even if the wheat had more chromosomes, it's still wheat. That's not evolution. Go ahead.
Okay, but corn, teosinte is not corn. It's all my points. But we can go even further. Sorry?
Do you think corn is simply grass that has evolved into corn? Is it just, it's in the,
yes,
we put it in the plant family with grass.
You can still get a hybrid from teosinte and corn. So it's the same kind if they can reproduce. So I know that teosinte
are you saying corn and grass? Are you saying corn and grass can reproduce? You can cross the seeds of those?
Yes.
I want to see that. I want to see that. I don't believe that.
Put it in my presentation.
I still don't believe it.
You get teosinte, hybrid, corn.
Okay.
Okay.
Is it still a plant? Can you crossbreed an octopus? Can you crossbreed an octopus with corn?
That's a good question. And that's my last point, actually. So we can get to. Sorry, okay. We get to my last point: horizontal gene transfer. So I've seen, of course, both natural and artificial example of these processes. I did it myself on nematodes, so I knew a little about it. Then you have something like the sweet potato plant, that it's a hybrid to plant to bacteria. So we have a bacteria genome in a plant. They are the same kind because you are in a different domain of life here. So if you can get a hybrid from those two, does mean that those two are the same kind?
If in the laboratory they can force the genes to splice, that is not evidence that they're for evolution. This is man. I bet you could cut a motorcycle in half and cut a car in half and weld the two parts together. Okay, that's man-made. It doesn't happen. What we've been able to see in nature, and every farmer will tell you, corn produces corn and cows produce cows. I'm sorry, there simply are no exceptions to that. What you believe, and you've used the word imagine about 10 times here, you imagine that they're all related. And it is imagination. It's not science. Science is things we can observe and study and test. Evolution is not science. It's a religious belief, and you're welcome to keep it. But it's not science. Corn produces corn. If it's left alone to it, if you turned all the corn in the world loose in the woods and just let it reproduce, it would all develop back into something less than the special species. Most of the special variations of corn that man has developed would not survive long without babysitting them. Same thing with the cows. Turn all the cows in the world loose in the woods, just let them go. With come back in 5 years or 10 years, most of the special breeds they have wouldn't be here. Well, they can't make it. So if in the laboratory they can force the genes of get the genes of a human ear and put it on to grow on the back of a mouse, that's been done. Okay, that's not proof it can happen in nature. You guys are so desperate to want to believe in evolution in general, and the purpose of the debate tonight was, is there evidence for evolution? I'm going to say there is only evidence for what we call microevolution. I think it's a bad word. We should not use that word. It's just a variation. There are millions of examples of what they call microevolution. Certain sparrows up in the north have a denser body than the sparrows in the south. Okay, it's still a sparrow, and it gets cold in the north. So of course the heavy body sparrows are going to survive, and they won't survive. The skinnier ones won't survive. They freeze, but it's still a sparrow. That's not evolution. It's a variation of the kind. This is an example of natural selection. Nature can select, and so your body's not heavy enough, you're not going to survive, and you freeze. Okay, but nature cannot create anything new. Somebody in the laboratory might force some genes together. You might get a stalk of corn to grow on somebody's head. I don't know, I doubt that, but what if you did? That doesn't prove anything. That's being forced in the laboratory. That's not natural. It's not evolution. There is no evidence at all. The purpose of the debate tonight, where's the evidence for evolution? I think we have to define the word. What do you mean by evolution? If you mean microevolution, I'll agree. That happens all the time. All the other ones do not happen. There's no evidence at all for anything above microevolution. Go ahead.
Okay. First of all, the sweet potato plant was not made in a laboratory, so it's natural. Horizontal gene transfer does happen in nature, and that's why I bring it up. So yeah, we can get hybrids in nature too. Sweet potatoes is one, but it's not the only one. So it's just an example. Then we just copied the mechanism to use it to our advantage. So yeah, we can make GMOs, we can make pigs with human hearts, but we are using a natural phenomenon to do it. Of course, we will pick up what we need. Nature does not that, but we still have that. Like retrovirus in humans too, they are the same thing. There are scars in our DNA, and we can discuss the mechanism of it because I've studied, I've done it. So you are familiar with this phenomenon, how it works, of course, on let's say high school level. I do not want to go further. It's not my field of study, of course, but I did study it. So did you know a little about it, how it works, why we can know that happened?
If I understand what you're talking about, you talked about the variety of potatoes. Yes, they can force the genetic combination of different things, but again, that's not happening in nature. You might have done it something in the laboratory. That's congratulations, but that doesn't prove it happened by chance in the wild. All we've ever seen is 4,000 varieties of potatoes. I would be willing to bet they all grow in the dirt. None of them grow on trees. I'd be willing to bet none of them grow on cows. I'd be willing to bet if you cross a potato with a cow, you will get nothing. Won't happen. The cow will be disappointed and won't like it at all. Go ahead.
Okay. So my point was different. I was talking about the horizontal gene transfer. I was asking you if you know the mechanism of it, how it works.
About transferring genes?
Yes.
Gene splicing you're talking about?
Genes from, it happens both with the virus and bacteria, more or less. There are the two main vehicles for that kind of transfer. So did you know a little about it?
I know a little about it. I taught high school biology, but I don't think that the gene transferring that they do in laboratories and stuff like that is any evidence for evolution. Just the gene is already complicated. I bet we could take a book that's in Italian and a book that's in English and transfer the words together and confuse everybody with a book that's now half Italian, half English. But it's somebody doing that work. It's not happening by itself. What we've done in the laboratory is transfer genes or gene splicing, etc. That doesn't mean that it's not evidence for evolution. The fact that we can make it happen does not prove it did happen. That's why evolution is simply a religion that you've chosen to believe in. Great, believe in it, but don't call it science.
Okay. So I will explain a little.
Questions? Okay, I'm sorry. I think we're into question answer time, aren't we, brother? Donnie?
Yeah, I was actually just going to jump in.
Okay, I thought so. This will go forever like this.
Yeah, we've got a minute and a half left on the discussion. Okay, so what I want to do is, you know what we'll do is, Luca, if you had a couple points you wanted to address there, we do have the 5-minute closing. So therefore, kind of wrap up your thoughts in terms of the discussion within your 5-minute closing. And then we'll do the same for Kent. We'll give him 5 minutes to wrap up his thoughts in terms of the discussion and give any closing thoughts. And then we're going to do some audience questions because we do have some really good ones. So, Luca, when you're ready, I'm going to give you 5 minutes.
Okay. So, I'm ready.
Go ahead.
Okay. So, my point was this process, the horizontal gene transfer, is made by virus or bacteria. So we know how it happens in nature. They cut the DNA in a certain way. We know how they do it, where they do it. So we simply hijack the process to cut and paste part of DNA that we need to insert in an organism. So it happens in nature too. The bacteria that is responsible to that, it's the agrobacterium. So we know how it's happened. It's an organism that does this job. We know what's the sign of it, because when you cut the DNA, it's not an even cut. There is an uneven cut, and we know the sequence that they are needed to happen. There are certain enzymes to do it. So we know a lot about it. And it's the same process, but we just use it for our advantage. Nature or not, The only change is we want certain things. Nature does not want anything. It's just something that happens. So I gave my evidence. I think I did a very good job, and I hope at least. And I just want to say to all people watching that science is a very good thing, and you do not need to give up your faith for it. And dare to be curious, because it's a very beautiful thing to learn about nature and anything else. So that's it for me.
All right. Well, I appreciate that. That was your 5-minute closing statement. Great discussion, gentlemen. We're going to hand it over to you, Kent. Kent, you also have 5 minutes for a closing statement.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for coming on the program, Lucas. I appreciate that. I think I stand by my point that all we've ever seen is animals or plants produce after their kind. If you can, in the laboratory, do gene cutting and gene splicing, this is not evidence for evolution. This is evidence that man, with a mind trying to decide, what do I want this to be? He's doing the cutting. Does it happen in nature? No. But you guys trust on this to change cows into something other than a cow. Cows produce cows, corn produces corn, wheat produces wheat, potatoes produce potatoes, dogs produce dogs. There are no exceptions known in the world, in the history of the world. No exceptions known. So Bible said very clearly they will bring forth after their kind. Said that 10 times in the very first chapter. You are correct. Science is a wonderful thing. I love science. Evolution is not part of science. Evolution is a crazy religion that some people believe in. There's a lot of crazy religions in the world. You're welcome to have it. But you're not welcome to force it down everybody's throat in school with taxpayer expense. Go start a private school and teach the kids the whales are related to the mosquito and they came from a bacteria. Teach that at a private school and see how many kids sign up to pay to come learn it. You can only survive with this stupid religion of evolution by forcing it on public school students at taxpayer expense. God said they'll bring forth after their kind. That's all we've ever seen. There are no exceptions. And I agree. I love science. You said you don't need to give up your faith. I agree. You can have complete faith. This book is true 100%. God said he created everything in 6 days. That's the only way it's going to work. The plants are breathing in CO2 and giving off oxygen. The animals are breathing in oxygen and giving off CO2. They reciprocate the gases, a symbiotic relationship, of which there are billions of examples of symbiotic relationships. This had to be designed within and created within a day or so of each other. Only way it's going to work. So I think the Bible is true. God created the earth. It's about 6,000 years old. It's not billions of years old. And there is no evidence at all for cosmic evolution, the Big Bang. No evidence for chemical evolution, your specialty. How do you get past iron? There's no evidence for origin of life, organic evolution. There's no evidence for macroevolution. What you've shown tonight clearly is only evidence for what God said would happen. They bring forth after their kind. I yield my time.
All right. Well, I appreciate that closing statement. Dr. Hovind, thank you, gentlemen, for a fantastic debate. Time really has flown by. We're going on the hour and 10-minute mark. So what I'm going to do is put a timer for the audience Q&A. We do have a ton of great questions. So as we typically do on this channel, let's say the questions for Kent. Kent will obviously get the first opportunity to answer it. Luca, if there's something you want to add, let's say a minute worth of comments, we'll give you that opportunity, but then Kent would get the last word. So whoever the question is for, we'll make sure he gets the last word. So here's the first super chat that came in. This one came in from Alec Cox. I appreciate the support. His question is for you, Luca. So he asks, are cattle variations any different than dog variations of selective breeding? In brackets, he puts human intervention, ?
No, of course, are selected by humans. Artificial selection, it's the same thing that natural selection, but it's much faster. And of course, humans select what they want. Nature selects what's its best fit for the their of nature selects the best fit animal to survive. Of course, we do different things because we need other things.
Okay, well, I appreciate that response, Luca. Dr. Hovind, if you had anything to add, go ahead.
Well, all the cattle variations that we see, there's two different ways they're produced: human intervention or natural selection. Again, if all the cows in the world were loose in a certain environment, let's say a desert, well, now the cows are going to have some means of storing water for long periods of time. They might get a hump of fat on their back, like the Brahma or the Zebu. So that's still a cow, but nature selected those that are able to store fat for long periods of time to survive. Those that are store water. And so nature can have a selection process to select those that can stand the heat better, or stand the cold better, or stand high altitude, less oxygen, low altitude. Certainly, there's natural selection forces at work, but it doesn't create anything. It just selects. And then humans step in and select it even further. They want a cow that can stand the desert and can give more meat. And so, yeah, but you have to select within the gene code. I'd be willing to bet $1 million I couldn't give all the farmers or all the scientists in the world 50 hamsters and say, turn this into a cow. You're never going to get a cow from the hamster gene code. Never. And you're certainly not going to start with a corn and turn it into a cow. That I'd bet $10 million on. Go ahead.
All right, I appreciate that response, Kent. Luca, the question was for you, so go ahead. You can have the final word.
Whole cows are made by us. Were made by us because the wild counterpart is extinct now. So all cows are our fault.
Okay, let's get right to this next super chat that came in from One God Is Now Here. I appreciate the support. Short and easy question, Luca. Question is for you, and he asks, are you a skeptic of evolution?
I'm a skeptic about almost anything, but I think that there is a lot of evidence for evolution. So I will not call me a skeptic on the matter. But of course, if you can show me otherwise, I'm a skeptic. I'm a skeptic at heart, so I can change my mind.
All right, I appreciate that. Next question is from Pickled Grammar. Question for both. How did the DNA code originate? And whoever wants to start, you can start if you'd like, Luca.
Okay. In a minute or so, it's impossible. So we do not know. We think that RNA came first, and then from that you can get to DNA, but we do not know the exact process to get there.
All right, and Dr. Hovind, go ahead.
Well, I think it had to be designed by a really smart designer. I happen to know him personally. Luca, it's got to be 3 a.m. over there in Italy where you are. Thank you for saying up. Yeah, okay. I think you need to trust Jesus Christ as your Savior and call upon Him and start reading the book that God gave us called the Bible. I think it explains clearly that God made everything bring forth after their kind. I'm sorry they taught you to believe that you're related to a bacteria. You got lied to in your schools. I'm sorry. You need to really study this. You should be skeptical of evolution, depending what you mean by that word. You should certainly be skeptical of the first 5. They're not part of science. Go ahead.
All right, well, let's jump to this next super chat that comes in from Who, What, When. So I appreciate the super chat. Question for you, Luca. The questioner asks, Luca, how long I'll just read a word for it. How long many generations of dinosaurs? So I guess how many generations of dinosaurs, or how long would it take for them to die before they evolved functional wings?
Okay, they do not need to die. Wings were used first for keep the eggs warm, and of course they were also to keep the animal warmer, and then they were used to break falls, and with a lot of time, of course, they get to the wings that we know. A curious thing, the dinosaurs as Velociraptor and so on, they had a very peculiar movement of the forearms. That that movement was the precursor of the flight. So it's a very interesting topic. I'm not an expert on it, and on the time scale, I do not know really. Thousand million years, I do not know.
All right. Well, thank you, Luca. Dr. Hovind, if you wanted to add anything, go ahead.
Well, the magic ingredient the evolutionists always call on is time. They think billions of years will solve anything. That's their God. The books are now teaching, I think, one of the absolutely most insane things ever taught in science, that birds evolved from a group of meat-eating dinosaurs. I just Googled this a few seconds ago. Okay. The idea that a dinosaur turned into a bird, the question was, how did they get wings? A great question. They didn't. Dinosaurs did not have feathers, they did not grow wings, and they did not turn into a chicken. Dinosaurs produced baby dinosaurs. They were big lizards. The word dinosaur means terrible lizard. Reptiles don't have feathers. They have made up some really stupid ones to put in museums now, and the kids are taught this stuff. Look at this dinosaur with feathers to keep warm. Reptiles don't have the capacity to grow feathers. They have scales, and scales and feathers are vastly different. Do some anatomy study, how the scales are produced in the gene code, how they attach to the skin, how they grow and develop. There is no connection between a scale and a feather. They're both made of the same protein, keratin, like your fingernails and your hair. Okay, that's a good building material. The Ferrari and the Eiffel Tower are both made out of iron. That doesn't prove they're related. It's a common building material. So they've taken this crazy idea that dinosaurs turned to birds and are forcing it down the brains of all the students in school. I think it is stupid. I yield my time.
All right, I appreciate that, Kent. And Luca, the question was for you. If you wanted just a quick final word, go ahead.
So, of course, dinosaurs were not lizards, are completely different. Their structure, their bones are similar to modern birds in a lot of ways. And also we do have a lot of fossil of feathers on dinosaurs, not only within the tetrapods that are the most close thing to birds in dinosaurs. I'm not an expert, so maybe I'm wrong on that, but all dinosaurs, more or less, not all of them, of course, but all major groups had feathers. Of course, some of those were very primitive feathers, not the feathers you can see now on birds. I yield my time.
Okay, Luca, I appreciate that. We're going to start wrapping it up here with these last couple questions. We've had a big audience with a lot of questions, so I apologize to anybody whose question we did not get to. But as usual, if we were to get to every question, we'd be here all night. And Luca, I know it's really late for you, so I appreciate you giving us your time for this. So this question comes in from Brandon. Question for you, Luca. He says, can he provide any evidence of truly new specified information created by way of mutations and not from shuffling or duplication?
Okay. On wheat, I do not know. You must know that wheat reproduce for the most part with cloning, because it reproduce with himself. So it's clone. There are cloning most of the time, of course. But the example that I gave, it's important because there are 3 different genomes from 3 different plants. So it's new information. It's not a simple copy. We have 14 chromosomes from the acorn, 14 chromosomes from another plant, and 14 chromosomes from another plant. So there are also mutations in it, for sure, but I do not know them in detail. But it's not a simple copy. It's important. It's not a simple copy.
All right. Thank you, Luca. Kent, if you wanted to add anything to that, go ahead.
No, we've already discussed that. Man splicing chromosomes together is not evidence for evolution.
All right, gentlemen. Well, I wanted to, let me see here. I wanted to, before we ended here and get some final thoughts from you guys, super chat came in from Logical, Plausible, Probable. Looks like he's having an after show. After show is going to kickstart right after this debate. So here's the last question. This one came in for you, Dr. Hovind. Question is, let me see here. Blaster Master 80 asks, Kent, is cauliflower a mustard kind?
I don't know. I don't like mustard. I like cauliflower a little bit, but I don't like mustard, so I don't know. I think man has developed the different plants and has decided they want to take this plant and get more of the root or more of the leaf or more of the berry or the fruit. Sure, man has developed this. Would any of them have developed in the wild by nature? Probably most of them would not. So I don't know the answer to that. But again, that would be man intervening, and nature can do the same thing. Nature can select the birds that are heavier to survive up in the north where it gets cold. But that's not creating anything. It's still a bird. So anything that's been done with a mustard plant to produce, maybe it probably came from cauliflower. Let's assume that it did. That was, again, man selecting to breed for that particular trait. It didn't create. It's still a plant. Okay.
I appreciate that, Dr. Hovind. And Luca, one final question for you. This came in the form of a super chat just now. Question from Ryan Gordon. I appreciate the support. He asks, dinosaurs are cold-blooded, so what use would feathers have in warming their eggs, especially when most reptiles don't lay on their eggs?
For what we know, dinosaurs were not cold-blooded. So birds are not cold-blooded. So no, they were warm-blooded. Where this change happened, I do not know. I'm not an expert, but for sure, dinosaurs were not cold-blooded. They have a different heart from lizard or other like reptiles. So yeah, they were very, very efficient creatures.
All right. Well, I appreciate that super chat, and thank you for the answer, Luca. So that being said, reminder, guys, after show starts right after this debate ends. Open mic discussion on Logical, Plausible, Probable's channel. So we are going on an hour and a half. Kent, Luca, thank you so much, gentlemen, for giving us your time for this important debate. Is there a reasonable evidence for evolution? Definitely an awesome and fun topic. So before we shut it down for the night, final thoughts, final words. Gentlemen, we can start with you, Dr. Hovind. Thanks again for being here.
Well, the book starts off, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. I believe that's true. It ends up talking about how the world's going to end. I believe that's true also. You might want to read that carefully. I think it's the most scientific book we got on the planet. I think it's accurate in every detail. I believe it from cover to cover. I gave my heart to Jesus Christ almost 53 years ago. I encourage everybody to do that because we have sinned. We've broken his laws. We're going to be found guilty in Judgment Day. And if there is a God, this is Pascal's wager, then you better find out who he is and what he wants. If there's no God, I haven't lost a thing. I've had a wonderful life. I enjoy living. And it's been great. So if I find out when I die I'm just dead, I guess I won't know it, will I? But no, I think there's an afterlife, and you're going to be there a long time. Get ready for that. Luca, come visit Dinosaur Adventureland in Lenox, Alabama. I'll give you the tour. We'd love to have you here.
I will love that.
Thank you, Kent, for those final words. I appreciate it. Luca, final thoughts, final words?
It was a very fun time. As I said, it was an honor, and I have to give my thanks to a couple of guys. To call me Emo, it helped me a lot for this debate, and to my friend Chantal, that he helped me a lot to to do the presentation work. So thanks to both of you. It was a very good experience. It's an honor to be here, and I hope that the people in chat they had a good time too, especially some people that I know, and I hope it was fun.
Definitely, Luke. I appreciate those final thoughts and words. An hour and a half really has flown by. We had over 200 people in the chat with a ton of great feedback, comments. Chat was very lively. So I appreciate it again. Kent and Luca. Guys, we'll see you back here tomorrow night at 9 o'clock for an epic soteriology debate. Until then, SFT is out. God bless all.